everyone, it's Angie. Welcome back to my channel, Angie and the Great World. A couple of things before I get started. First of all, I'm looking at a little green dot on my phone, which is where I think I'm supposed to look, but it's causing my eyes to want to cross. So I'm going to look away every once in a while because I don't want my eyes to cross. And then just a reminder, I live on a very heavily trafficked street. So I have filmed this over and over multiple times. Hopefully this is the last time I have to film this because it was just a lot of pausing, a lot of noise, a lot of distractions. So anyways, I wanted to talk today about the books that I read in August. I finished 2 books. I started a 3rd book, but I did not finish it. I'm hoping to finish that one in September. I'm going to go ahead and talk very briefly about that book first, and then I'll get into the 2 that I finished. So I started reading a book titled The Search for Significance. I don't remember the author, but I'll put an image of it somewhere here, and I'll try to do a better job than I did in my previous video. So a friend called me, I guess it was at the beginning of August, maybe like the 2nd week in August, out of the blue, and I was going through some really hard things at that moment. I still am. I'm still dealing with certain things. And she asked me if I wanted to read this book, and I thought, you know, it's probably not a coincidence that she asked me to read this book with her, so I'm going to go ahead and read it. I'm not very far in. I'm only 5. I think I'm on chapter 5. It would be considered probably Christian self-help. I don't know exactly what you would call that, if it's called self-help, if it's a Christian book. But there are lessons I'm learning. I'm trying to apply them to my life, although it is really hard. So anyways, that's one of the books that I started. The books that I read, I finished Mrs. Pringle by Miss Read. It is one of the books in the Fair Acre series. I am part of the Fair Acre read-along with Kate Howe, Chelsea from Voyage of a Time Wanderer, and Rainy from Rainy Day Reads. I had not participated in the book discussions for several months just because of life getting in the way. So this past month was my first month back in a long time. I really enjoyed Mrs. Pringle. I like learning about a little bit more about her. I know she's not a super likable character. She's not likable at all, but I find her really interesting, and so I liked reading about her. One of the things I did like about the book is that it was very brief. I love Miss Read's writing, but sometimes the little vignettes that she includes are not exactly the most riveting, and so they can sort of get a little boring. So I really enjoyed how brief Mrs. Pringle was. And then the other book that I read, I actually have a physical copy of. I brought a copy of it with me from the US, and this is Look Homeward Angel by Thomas Wolfe. Now, I first heard about Thomas Wolfe when I was probably in my late teens, maybe 20. I was reading a book called I Am the Cheese, or I had read a book called I Am the Cheese by Robert Cormier. And in the book, the narrator talks about how he was experiencing, well, it was fall when the book takes place. And he said that it wasn't a Thomas Wolfe kind of October of ghost winds and rattling leaves. It was a different kind of October. And so that description of a Thomas Wolfe October stuck in my head, and I knew I wanted to read Thomas Wolfe. And I can almost swear that I think either in the book or Robert Cormier himself has said that nobody writes autumn the way Thomas Wolfe writes autumn, but I cannot find that quote anywhere. I don't know if I just made that up in my head or if it's an actual quote that I read at the time. But anyway, I was at 21. When I was 21 years old, I was looking through, browsing the shelves. I was browsing the shelves at my public library, and I came across Look Homeward Angel by Thomas Wolfe. And so I read it at that time. Like I said, I was 21, and I felt like the book came into my life at the exact moment that I needed it. It was very meaningful to me. In the book, which is autobiographical, Thomas Wolfe, who is Eugene Gant in the story, he has an older brother, spoiler, but I think it's important for people to know this. He has an older brother, Ben, who passes away in October. And Ben's death scene is one of the most heartbreaking in all of literature. It surpasses Beth's death scene in Little Women by far. And so my oldest sister had passed away a year ago in October, and so I identified a lot with the character, especially in that moment. And also I felt like Thomas Wolfe said things that like my heart was feeling, but I didn't have the words to express what I was feeling, and Thomas Wolfe did it beautifully. So yeah, I finished reading Look Homeward Angel. It did not have the same significance for me this time around that it did when I was 21, but it was still very beautiful prose, wonderful story, and I am going to read the sequel of Time in the River in November, I think. Now, one of the things I wanted to do was I wanted to read Ben Gant's death scene to you guys, to all of you, which takes place over several different pages. It spans many pages. But what I did is I pulled the most beautiful, the most heart-wrenching passages from his death scene, and I highlighted those and I wanted to read those to you, but I don't want this video to be longer than it's going to be. So what I did is I recorded myself, I taped myself, filmed myself. I think that's what we say now, right? I filmed myself reading those scenes, and I'm just going to upload that clip later on because I don't want this to be any longer than it is. Anyways, Look Homeward Angel, I think like one of my other favorite books, A Confederacy of Dunces, I think it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. I know I read some reviews on Goodreads and they said this was the most boring thing they'd read. I enjoyed it. I think the writing is beautiful. Anyway, that's enough of Look Homeward Angel. Thank you so much for watching. I will talk to you later. And if you want to see me read poorly from Look Homeward Angel, that is going to go up at some point. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. I will talk to you later.